If you own a home in Australia right now, there's a good chance that you're sitting on 100,000, 200,000, maybe even 300,000 that could be working for you. But instead, it's just sitting there. My name is Jack Chen, and over the past 8 years as a broker, I've helped clients access over 450 million in loans. And I can tell you, the investors who build serious portfolios aren't the ones with the highest incomes. They are the ones who understand how to use equity properly. So, in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly how equity works, how to access it safely, and most importantly, how to structure it so you can start a property portfolio without waiting years to save for another deposit. Let's start with the basics. Equity is basically the difference between what your property is worth and what you owe on it. So let's say you bought a property for $650,000 3 years ago. Today it's worth $800,000 and you still owe $400,000 on the mortgage. So your equity is $400,000, and that's the $800,000 it's worth minus the $400,000 that you still owe. Now, what we really want to talk about is usable equity. This is the portion of your equity you can actually access without getting into high risk borrowing territory. Most banks will only let you borrow up to 80% of your property's value. With our 800,000 property, 80% is 640,000, which you already owe 400,000, which means you can apply to borrow 240,000 in usable equity. Now this is important. That 240,000 isn't cash sitting in your account. You need to apply for it just like any other loan, which means the banks will assess your income, expenses, and credit history. So how does this all tie into the next property? Let's say we're looking to buy a similar property that's worth 800,000 as an investment. You will generally need 20% deposit to avoid lender's mortgage insurance. On top of that, you need to cover stamp duty, government charges, and legal costs. All in all, we're looking at about 200,000. So with 240,000 in usable equity, we could extract 200,000 for the investment property purchase, leaving 40,000 of equity still accessible for future use. If you're trying to save 200,000 from your income, let's say you can put away $2,000 a month. That's 8 years of disciplined savings. Even if you're aggressive and save 3,000 a month, you're still looking at almost 6 years. But here's the problem with waiting 6 to 8 years. The market doesn't wait for you. Right now, Australian property prices are growing at over 6% annually, with capital cities seeing even stronger growth. That means the 800,000 investment property you're targeting today, it will likely be worth 1.1 million in 6 years, assuming conservative growth rates. But when you use equity strategically, you can dramatically reduce that timeline. And reducing the timeline is where magic happens due to compounding growth. Compounding growth is the process which the value of an investment grows not only based on the initial amount invested, but also on the accumulated interests or returns from previous periods. Essentially, you earn interest on interest. Over time, this can lead to significant growth because the returns keep building on top of each other. Rather than the original investment, it's like a snowball effect, where the longer you leave your money invested, the faster it can grow. Let me show you how it works using my previous example. We know that you already own your first property, which you bought 3 years ago for 650,000, which is now worth 800,000. We also know that you can use equity to purchase another property worth 800,000, which means you will now have two properties growing equity with a potential rate of 6% per year. So let's look at the compounding effect of this. So what we can see from this table is that by year 3, you have almost 240,000 in usable equity, which would allow us to continue to buy our third property. Having two properties compounds the effect of equity growth and hence speeds up our timeline. Assuming that we continue this trend, it's not at all unlikely that you could be owning 4 to 5 properties by year 7 or 8. This is even with consideration of property price increases over the years. Right, so you understand what equity is and how much you can access. Now, how do you actually get your hands on it? First thing, this is still a loan application. The equity doesn't just appear in your bank account. You need to apply for it, just like you did with your original mortgage. The difference is that this loan is secured against the property you already own. Now, you've got two options here. You can go back to your current lender or you can shop around. As a mortgage broker, I usually look at the whole picture first. Sometimes your current bank is perfect. Sometimes we need to move you to get a better rate or access more equity. The main reason why you would want to look elsewhere is that different banks can use different valuation methods. For example, some will use an automated valuation method, while others send physical valuers. Some may be more conservative in certain suburbs or the type of property. I've had a situation where one bank values the property at 800,000 and another at 850,000. That extra 50,000 in valuation gives you an extra 40,000 in accessible equity. So when you're looking at accessing equity, it's worth comparing what different lenders can offer. Now, once you've secured access to that equity, the next critical decision is how to structure the loan, because this determines your flexibility for future investments and your tax position. I'll start by telling you what not to do when it comes to the structuring, and that is, don't just top up your existing home loan. Let me explain why. Your home loan is what we call bad debt. You can't claim interest as a tax deduction because you're not making money from living in your home. But when you use equity to buy an investment property, that becomes good debt because the interest is tax deductible because you're using it to generate income. So you need to keep these loans separate. When you access your equity, ask your broker or bank to create a separate loan split. A loan split is exactly what it sounds like. You're splitting your total debt into two or more separate loan accounts. They're both loans secured against the same property. So instead of having one loan account for 640,000, you would have loan one, which is 400,000, which is your original home loan that is non-tax deductible. Loan two, 200,000, which will be your equity loan for investment that is tax deductible. They're both sitting on the same property, but they are tracked separately in the bank system. Each split has its own loan number, its own statement, and most importantly, its own clear purpose. Here's why this matters. When tax time rolls around, your accountant needs to see exactly which debt is investment related. If you just topped up your existing home loan from 400,000 to 640,000, everything is mixed together. You'd have to track every single transaction to prove which portion was used for investment purposes. But with a loan split, it's crystal clear. Every dollar borrowed in loan two went towards your investment property. Every cent of interest you pay on that split is tax deductible. Another thing to mention when we talk about structure is cross-collateralization. This is when the bank bundles all of your properties together as security for all your loans. It sounds convenient, but it's only convenient for them, not for you. Here's why. Let's say you own two properties worth 500,000 each, and you want to sell one. With cross-collateralization, the bank might say, well, we need to make sure that the remaining property has enough value to secure all the remaining debt. This can stop you from selling when you want to. Always insist on separate loans for separate properties. Yes, it's a bit more paperwork, but it gives you more control over your portfolio. Now, before you get too excited and start shopping for properties, let's talk about what you need to consider because this strategy isn't for everyone. First, financial literacy. And you need to know how to calculate your actual tax benefits based on your income. If you hear those terms and feel overwhelmed, that's okay. But it means you need to educate yourself or work with professionals who can walk you through it. Second, cash flow. Let's say you buy an $800,000 property using $200,000 from your equity and borrowing $640,000. You're actually servicing $840,000 in investment-related debt. Combined, that's roughly $4,900 per month in loan repayments. Add in rates, insurances, property management. This could end up being another $400 to $500 a month. So you're looking at about $540,000 in total monthly costs. With rent coming in at around $2,800 to $3,000 per month, you're about $2,400 to $2,600 out of pocket before tax. Now the good news, all that interest, which is roughly $48,000 in the first year, is tax deductible. If you're in a 37% tax bracket, that's about $1,500 per month in tax savings. So your real cost after tax is roughly $1,000 per month, or about $230 per week. But can you comfortably afford that? What if the property sits vacant for a month? What if the interest rate go up by another 1%? If you can genuinely handle $1,000 per month out of pocket, plus have buffers for unexpected costs, this is manageable. If not, you may not be ready yet. Third, long-term mindset. You might be paying that $1,000 per month for 5, 7, or even 10 years before rents catch up. Or you've paid down enough debt to reach neutral cash flow. You need to keep in mind that this is a 10 to 15 years wealth building strategy that requires stable, predictable income, financial discipline, and the patience to ride out the market cycles. If you're already stretched with your current mortgage or uncertain about your future financial circumstances, then wait. But if you're financially stable and understand the commitment, this is how you can build wealth. If you don't fall into either of those categories and are confident in wanting to explore how to use equity to build your property portfolio, the next step is getting a proper assessment of your situation. Every property owner's situation is different. Your income, your current debt, your property values, and your investment goals are all factored into the best strategy for you. As a mortgage broker, I help property investors across Australia structure the loans and help them reach their investment goals. If you'd like to discuss your specific situation and see what options are available to you, I've left a link to book a strategy call in the description below. Otherwise, I hope you found this helpful. See you in the next one.